He signed the paper without looking. Just another hire in a life ruled by contracts and numbers. But that careless signature pulled a woman back into his world, the woman he once loved, divorced, and never forgot. And waiting quietly outside his glass office doors was a little girl with his eyes and a secret that would tear his perfect life apart. He thought success had buried his past forever. He was wrong, because some truths don't disappear. They wait, and when they finally step into the light, they change everything. Daniel Carter had built his empire from nothing. At 38, he was the CEO of Carter Innovations, a fast-growing tech company in New York. Employees feared his discipline, investors admired his control, and the media loved his story. What they didn't know was that behind the glass walls and luxury penthouse lived a man who went home to silence every night. 6 years earlier, Daniel had lost the only person who ever tried to break through that silence: his wife, Emily Carter. Back then, Daniel believed emotions were weaknesses. He worked late, skipped anniversaries, canceled dinners, and brushed off every conversation Emily tried to have about starting a family. "I don't want kids," he had said coldly one night. "Not now, maybe never." Emily had gone quiet after that. A few months later, she asked for a divorce. Daniel didn't stop her. He thought success would replace everything he was losing. It didn't. Single quotes. Now, years later, Daniel sat in his office, scanning documents before a board meeting. His assistant placed a folder on his desk. "Final shortlist for the new project coordinator. Sir, HR needs your approval." Without looking carefully, Daniel signed the last page. Another decision made in seconds. 2 days later, his mistake walked into his office. "Mr. Carter, I'm Emily Walker. I'm here for my first day." Daniel looked up and felt the world freeze. There she was, older, calmer, but unmistakably Emily. The woman he had once called his wife. The woman he hadn't seen since the divorce papers were signed. "Emily," he whispered. She stiffened. "I didn't know this was your company," she said quietly. "I wouldn't have applied if I did." Neither of them spoke for a moment. Years of memories sat heavy between them. "You're hired?" he finally asked. She nodded. "Seems like it." After she left, Daniel stared at the door. He called HR immediately, asking how this happened. The answer was simple. "You approved her file yourself, sir." He had hired his ex-wife by mistake. For the rest of the day, Daniel couldn't focus. Part of him wanted to undo it, to push her out of his life again before old wounds opened. But another part, the lonely part, didn't want her gone. Emily worked professionally, avoiding eye contact, keeping everything strictly business. She didn't mention their past, and neither did he. Yet every time he saw her in the hallway, his chest tightened. A week later, Daniel arrived early and noticed Emily standing near the building entrance, looking worried. Beside her stood a small girl with a pink backpack, holding Emily's hand. The child was about 5 or 6 years old. When the girl looked up and smiled at Daniel, his breath caught. Those eyes, gray-blue, the same as his dot. Emily noticed his stare and instantly shifted, placing herself slightly in front of the child. "My babysitter canceled," she said quickly. "I was just about to leave." Daniel crouched to the girl's level. "Hi," he said softly. "What's your name?" The girl smiled wider. "Lucy." Daniel swallowed. "How old are you?" "Lucy. 5, she said proudly, showing her fingers. 5. The number echoed in his mind. He slowly stood and looked at Emily. "Emily, is she yours?" "Yes," she said. "And her father?" His voice trembled. Emily looked away. Her eyes filled. "She doesn't have one," she whispered. The truth hit him before she even said it. "Is she mine?" Emily closed her eyes and nodded. For a moment, Daniel couldn't breathe. The walls, the lobby, the world around him seemed to blur. "You said you didn't want kids," Emily said, her voice breaking. "You were already gone, Daniel. Always working, always chasing more. I didn't want to beg you to stay for something you never wanted. So I left. And I raised her alone." Daniel felt like he'd been punched in the chest. "I didn't know," he said. "If I had known, would it have changed anything?" she asked quietly. He had no answer. That day, he gave Emily paid leave and told her to go home, but he didn't return to work. He sat alone in his office until evening, staring at the city lights, realizing he had missed 5 years of his daughter's life. That night, he stood outside Emily's small apartment, unsure if he even had the right to knock. When she opened the door, Lucy peeked from behind her leg. "I just want to talk," Daniel said. "Please." Inside, Lucy went back to drawing while Daniel and Emily spoke in low voices. "I can't erase what I did," Daniel said, "but I won't walk away again." I want to know her. I want to be part of her life. Even if you hate me. Emily studied him for a long moment. She doesn't need a rich CEO, she said. She needs someone who shows up every day. Can you do that? I'll learn, he said, but I won't disappear again, I promise. Emily didn't agree immediately, but she didn't shut the door either. The following weeks changed Daniel's life. He started leaving work early to visit Lucy. He sat on the floor, played with toys, listened to her stories, and learned how to be patient. The boardroom confidence meant nothing when tying shoelaces or calming nightmares. Lucy grew attached quickly. To her, he was just Daniel at first. Then one day, without thinking, she called him Dad. The word broke something inside him. Emily watched everything carefully. She didn't trust easily, but she saw that Daniel showed up when he said he would. He stopped canceling, stopped hiding behind work. Late one evening, after Lucy had fallen asleep on the couch, Emily finally spoke. You've changed. Daniel nodded. Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. I don't want to lose her too. Silence hung between them, heavy but different now. Then, one night, Emily called him in panic. Lucy collapsed. We're at the hospital. Daniel drove like he'd never driven before. At the hospital, he found Emily shaking, tears streaming down her face. Without a word, he sat beside her and held her hand. Hours passed, doctors spoke in careful tones. Machines beeped. Lucy lay small and pale on the bed, and Daniel felt more helpless than ever. I would give everything I own to trade places with her, he whispered. When the doctor finally returned, he said Lucy would recover. It had been a severe infection, but she was stable now. Emily broke down in relief, and Daniel held her as if letting go would make everything disappear. That night, something shifted between them, not just as parents but as two people who had once loved each other deeply. From that day on, Daniel reorganized his life. He delegated work, skipped unnecessary meetings, and made Lucy his priority. The company noticed the change. So did Emily. Months later, in the same small apartment, Lucy was asleep while Emily and Daniel sat quietly. I never stopped loving you, Daniel said. I just didn't know how to be the man you needed back then. But I want to try now, not for success, not for guilt, but because this family matters more than anything. Emily looked at him for a long moment. We can't fix the past, she said softly, but maybe we can build something better. She reached for his hand. And in that moment, Daniel knew that the greatest deal of his life had nothing to do with business. He had found his way back home. If you believe second chances can change lives, hit like, subscribe, and share this story. Let us know in the comments, what would you do if you discovered a child you never knew you had.